listen to my dad Joe and Uncle Justin talk about sports?
The Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is brought to you by Mays Sandwich Shop, which have been serving the greater West Lawn area delicious food for over 70 years. You are listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show.
Boring.
A weekly podcast about sports since 2011.
Don't you ever get tired of being wrong all the time?
With a focus on football.
Second and goal. This guy has had some years.
Al, I've got to tell you, in a pressure situation, I don't know if I have ever seen anybody be better than Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp. Wow, what a drive.
4th and 1. Burrow trying to keep it down. Gets it away. Incomplete. Rams down. Running down to celebrate with a defensive play.
And guess who?
Of course,
I mean, you don't even have to think about it.
pointing to the ring finger.
When everything was on the line for the Rams, yes, we know it was Aaron Donald.
But the Rams were built to win the Super Bowl, and they have sealed the deal.
Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and Justin Raffoff.
Let's call this the Joe Mays and Paul Roberts show. We don't need that other guy, Paul. It's just you and me here tonight talking some NFL football. Yes, episode 362 of the Joe Mays and J-Raff show. And it's already off to a better start than 2 weeks ago because, one, I didn't have the incorrect year on the intro. And two, Justin's not here. So, well, he actually is here. Sorry, Justin. I didn't mean to not introduce you. J-Raff is here with us tonight talking via the phone. So, Mays Sandwich Shop Hotline. There's our shout out. Justin, how are you doing?
You know me. I'm always just trying to get those extra plugs in for your dad so he doesn't yell at me even more. So I'm glad I could be using the Mays Sandwich Shop Hotline.
Well, I do know what your picks are, and I think you're going to get a lot of discussion from my dad here tonight as we talk about the NFC East and AFC East.
I already know the emojis that are going to be popping up on your phone, thankfully out of sight of the webcam. So.
Yes, definitely. So here we are at the end of July, last day of July. And for a long time, Paul, I always tell Justin that July is the worst month of the year, sports-wise, right? It's just a terrible, terrible month. And I always gave him that crap because his birthday is July 24th. And, you know, I should have known this because I've known you now for a while, and I always forget until it happens. But your birthday's in July, too. So I feel a little outnumbered here. I can't diss on July all that much like I usually do. But no, July's not the worst month. That's obviously January and February. Those months are awful. Middle of winter in Pennsylvania is not great. And the end of football, it's always just such a downer time of the year, especially if your team's not in the Super Bowl. And as a Dolphins fan, I have literally never experienced that in my in any form of my life. I believe I was a few months old the last time the Dolphins were in the Super Bowl. So, yeah, it's been rough January and February. But, yeah, Justin and I always go back and forth about what the greatest sports month. So it was like the worst sports month is July. July is the worst sports month. You got nothing going on. It's because even baseball stops for like 4 days. But it just means football's around the corner. And that's what we want to focus on and talk about tonight. So NFC and AFC East, and we're going to dive right into the NFC East. Obviously, it's very near and dear to most of us here talking about it and listening, our big East Division fans, and nothing bigger than the NFC East because of the Philadelphia Eagles making a home there. But we've been going alphabetically by mascot, so the Eagles are not first up. They have been leapfrogged by another team who changed their name, so they don't even get to go second anymore. So I guess we're going to start there with the Commanders. And talk about the Washington football team as it had been known for 2 years, which I'm so glad that's gone. I don't know if Commanders is much better, but Washington football team is just not. I just can't get into that, especially because it like evoked like European soccer, and that's just that's not my thing. So the Commanders. So I'm gonna let our guest Paul. First up, give us your swing about what you expect from Washington Commanders led by new quarterback Carson Wentz.
Yeah, how about that? And I actually thought Justin was just calling into place an order at Maze. Are you guys open Sunday night?
No, he knows better. He knows better. Yeah, but I'm sure it would be a turkey and cheese plain, or a pretzel sandwich. That's kind of been a go-to more recently.
Could
so.
you deliver to the beach? To him?
We don't deliver. I mean, I always say we don't deliver at all. But my dad says if there's a big enough paycheck, he'll deliver to anyone who wants to order. So maybe if the Raffoff family and an extension that is with him would like to place an order for Virginia, possibly you might be able to get my dad to drive down there. I don't know.
Nothing like a good road trip, but I look at this division, and to me, it's a 2-horse race with Dallas and Philly. It is interesting though with Wentz coming to Washington. Last year, if you just look at his touchdown interception numbers, you'd think he had a great year, but it's just something about Carson in a big spot and some of the decision making. I think we all know he holds on to the football way too long. He takes a lot of sacks, and over the past few years, they've had a good offensive line. He takes a ton of sacks, and it's just because he won't get rid of the ball. And, sometimes you tip your cap because he's trying to make something happen. He's trying to make a play and buy some more time. But other times it's painful when you're watching him, and everyone kind of has that clock going off that the ball's got to be out, and he's still holding on to it. And through some really bad picks last season, I mean, I liked the Colts team a lot last year, and I thought they were really disappointing. I do like them a lot this year. In fact, you can get them at -115 to win that division, which I think is a phenomenal bet. But for Washington, I am curious to see what Wentz has left in the tank, but I obviously have question marks. Washington has spent a lot of draft equity on that defensive line. You look across the board, it's first round pick after first round pick after first round pick. So they can create some havoc there. But as far as being a playoff team or winning this division, I don't see it happening.
Yeah, they were 7-10 last year, and honestly, I feel like they sort of overachieved on the season because Ryan Fitzpatrick played a quarter of the season and then went out with that leg injury, that hip injury, and they were just rolling with Tyler Haneke was the guy. They upset the Buccaneers. They beat some good teams.
Yeah.
They won 7 games. Chase Young tore his ACL, missed a bunch of the time. It seemed like a lot of things were going against them, and they still managed to win 7 games. Now you're throwing Carson Wentz into that equation. It's just odd because he had what looked like to be an above average or good season in Indianapolis, and then those last 2 weeks things just really unraveled and everyone really soured on him. I mean, I think there was stuff behind the scenes going on that made the relationship a little bit rocky to begin with, but those last 2 weeks everyone just kind of turned, and I'm not sure it was completely his fault, but he certainly didn't help his cause. And now he's on his 3rd team in 3 years, and he's back in the same division as the team that drafted him. It'll be interesting to see how this season goes for them. Justin and I have always been big fans of Ron Rivera, so we always have been cheerleaders of his from dating back to his time in Carolina for many years. I think he deserves better than what he's been having to deal with at this time in Washington, both his personal health issues and then all the on and off the field stuff that's gone on with not only his players but his coaches and ownership. Are there going to be too many distractions there to make this work? I don't know, but 7-10 last year. Justin, what's your take on Washington?
Yeah, the thing, man, Washington is kind of hard to peg because I feel like they've kind of been in this spot for a while now, where they have some really talented players. Like, well, they have Terry McLaurin and, they have Chase Young. They've got some really, really talented pieces. But like, it just never seems to really come all together for them for a while. And Joey knows this. I give or have given Carson Wentz beyond every like chance. I was a big Carson apologist when he was an Eagle, and I understand, you move on and maybe it was best for both parties. And then, I was high on the Colts last year. I thought that was going to be a perfect fit for him. And for whatever reason, it didn't work. And like you said, you look at the numbers and his numbers were pretty good, but those last two games were inexcusable. And not just to lose, but the way they looked awful against Jacksonville in that last game was just, you knew he was gone. Like, you knew they weren't going to keep him. And it kind of, Joey and I on the last show, I think, talked about Kirk Cousins a little bit, about how you look at Kirk Cousins' numbers last year. He threw for over 4,000 yards, had like 30 some touchdowns and only 11 interceptions, something crazy. He had great numbers. And for his career, he's a 500 quarterback, and I kind of feel like maybe Wentz is kind of growing into that mold where he can put up great numbers, but it's just, going to have some of those losses that are inexplicable. For Washington.
No, sorry, go ahead.
Washington, no, it's just, I don't think they're going to be a terrible team, but I just don't know. Like, we fall into this trap a lot, or I fall into this trap a lot when we're making these predictions, but I feel like Washington is kind of a slightly below average team until they show me otherwise, and I don't know that Carson Wentz changes that at all. If Ron Rivera does find a way to get the most out of him, though, watch out, because, they didn't have to trade a ton for him. And, they've got some of those talented pieces at other places, like we said. I trust Ron Rivera. It's just, man, there's a lot going on there with players, and there's a lot going on there with all the ownership stuff and everything. So, it's a tough spot for him.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So I'm looking at their schedule here. They open with Jacksonville at home at FedEx Field. They already get the Eagles and Cowboys back-to-back in week 3 and 4. They don't have a bye until week 14, and that's actually sandwiched in between games against the Giants. And they finish in week 18 against the Cowboys, also at home. There's winnable games. Like I said, they were 7-10 last year. It'll be interesting when we get to our predictions where I'm going with them, because they're a team that I feel like maybe overachieved a little bit last year. They added some pieces in the offseason that I think should bump them up a bit, but am I willing to say that they're above 500? Are they going to be 9-8? Could they win 10 games? I don't know if I'm there, so I'm glad we have a few minutes here until we get to that part, because I'm just really, really confused as to where I'm going to go with the Commanders. Now, a team I'm a little bit more comfortable with, I think, at least on paper, are the Cowboys. They were 12-5 last season. They brought McCarthy back. Now they made some player personnel changes. Mari Cooper was sent off to Cleveland, but CeeDee Lamb seems to be ready to step into that role as the number one guy. They obviously have immense talent there. Sure, they lost Lyle Collins on the offensive line, and that line's not as good as it was 5 years ago. Right at the beginning of the Ezekiel Elliott reign down there. It was interesting. I know we're all big fans of Ross Tucker. He had on, who was the running back that he had on that he was talking to? But they're talking running backs. And he was pressuring him about the Cowboys because he had Ezekiel Elliott in his top 10, I believe. And Ross said that Ezekiel Elliott isn't even the best running back on his team. He thinks it's Tony Pollard.
A lot of people feel that way. Pollard seems so much more explosive. I mean, it just seems like he has another gear than Zeke Elliott does. So, yeah, you hear that a lot during the season. Dallas is one of those teams that definitely has talent, but they're one of these trust teams. Like, do I really trust them in a big spot? Do I really trust Mike McCarthy in a big spot. Last year, some of the decision making, some of the play calls, some of the time management, the clock management was atrocious. I mean, it was just unacceptable at any level, especially the NFL. Things like, when to go for two, and those are things that I pay really close attention to. And even the way it ended for them, the official kind of in the way, and they're scrambling around and running out of time. It just,
That was rough.
yeah. But then you
But
do kind
by
of
rough,
forget
you
they
mean
won.
fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, I was not shedding any tears. Maybe chuckling just a little bit. But then you do look back, and it's like they won 12 games. Now, part of that is the division. The division just isn't good. I mean, with Washington, the Giants were a debacle. So you can pick up wins in that division. Dallas certainly has talent. They're the favorite to win this division. They're plus 135. The Eagles are plus 165 if you look at DraftKings. So I think you can make a case for either Dallas or Philly. Certainly with Dak, I think most people would give him the edge over Jalen Hurts if you're looking at the quarterback spot. So would I be shocked if Dallas wins this division again? No, but to project them long term in the playoffs or to win the NFC, after what I saw last year with McCarthy, I was surprised that he was back. Really, and talk about being on a short leash. But there are players there for sure. Micah Parsons, who we saw at the high school
Phenomenal
level,
year,
and then
yeah.
at Penn State. And what he did last season, he's a terror. He's already one of the best defensive players in the league. And they have weapons at wide receiver, well, like you talked about. They're one of those teams that, because now everybody has 17 different fantasy football teams, and they can put up points. They have some explosive players, but it's just something about them. I don't trust them.
Well, yeah, I think they showed that last year. And for many years, when they don't underachieve in the regular season, they seem to have some ridiculous choke in the playoffs. I don't know how else to describe last year, and that was very frustrating to me because, my dad is the Cowboys fan. That's why Justin and him go at it so much. The Cowboys Eagles rivalry, but I watched some of these things that have haunted the Cowboys for the last. A lot of people like to say now for over 25 years,
Yeah.
the issues that they've had. The one last year has to take the cake. I feel that was just, I couldn't believe it. And I know there were people not high on Mike McCarthy before he even got the Cowboys job. And with the way things went last year, I think a lot of us were a little surprised that he hung around again. But you mentioned it, short leash, and that's what he's going to have this year. But you also said they have the talent. This team was 12-5 last year. And there's some change, but every team goes through some change. And there's enough there that they should be, and you said they are the favorite and the betting favorite to win that division again. Do you trust them to win one or two playoff games, though?
No.
Until then, you can't think that they're an odds-on to make the Super Bowl. Justin, what is your take on your team that you love to hate?
Yeah, they absolutely are the team I love to hate. I won't deny that. Paul kind of summed it up really well. They, like, talent-wise, they're there with virtually any team in the NFL. They have a top-level quarterback, or some would maybe argue that he's not, but I think Dak is really good, and certainly good enough. We talked about some of the losses on the offensive line and at receivers, but the offensive line isn't what it was before. So I don't know that it's as big of a drop off as it would have been a few years ago if they lost Collins. And Amari Cooper it seemed to be an odd fit, and just it seemed to have run its course there, and he went on to a different team as well. So the losses were some big names like Randy Gregory too, but I think the names are going to be bigger than the production in terms of their loss. Like the names are familiar to fans and everything, but I think production wise, they're going to be able to replace a lot of that. I think I go to kind of Paul's point though. Like I don't trust them. Like I just there are teams that find ways to screw it up, and the Cowboys have done that for a long time now, and I am thankful for that, and I will keep being thankful for that. Hopefully this year, I they're I don't think they're going to be bad. I think they're going to be right there for the division. Yeah, doesn't surprise me at all that they're the favorites. I mean, if you look, they've got a very talented team and a really good quarterback. They should be there, and a coach who has won a Super Bowl, even though that seems like an eternity ago.
Yeah, like a decade ago, right?
Right, because of the decisions. Like I just and the thing is, like sometimes, like we talked about the Ravens, right? The Ravens, there was virtually nothing they could have done last year because of all the injuries, right? Like they just whatever happens. But when injuries or things happen, you tend to look, well, what are the chances that they have like 25 guys on IR again this year, right? But when you look at the stuff that goes wrong for the Cowboys, it's all like self-inflicted. It's all like decision making or just not being ready, or it's all things that, like, I don't know that you fix that. I don't know that goes away, and I feel like that adds pressure, and adding pressure, like knowing Mike McCarthy, knowing that Sean Payton has moved back to Texas and is just waiting for that job for next year. Like, anything short of the NFC Championship game, I think Mike McCarthy's gone, and he knows it, and probably everyone else there knows it too. So I think there's a lot of pressure, and this team has not shown the ability to really step up and handle that pressure very well.
Their schedule is is difficult. They have a difficult schedule.
Good.
They're a defending division champ, so they get the number one teams in the NFC. In addition to their 2 games against the Eagles, which I think we're all in agreement the Eagles are going to be better this year. They should be better this year. But they start off with back-to-back games against Tampa Bay and Cincinnati. Like that's a rough start for them.
And where are those at?
They are, thankfully for them, both in Dallas.
Both home?
They are both in Dallas. So second straight year they're opening with the Buccaneers. I think they went to Tampa last year because they were defending Super Bowl champs. So this year they get them in AT&T Stadium. Then the Bengals in AT&T Stadium. Then back-to-back games against the Giants and Commanders. So NFC East games. Then they go to the Rams and to the Eagles. So their first 6 weeks, they've got 3 strong teams and 3 NFC East games. Their bye is midseason at week 9, and they have Eagles and Commanders are 2 of their final 3 games, and the one sandwich in between is at Tennessee. So it depends. What are the Titans this year? Justin and I talked about them a few weeks ago or months ago at this point, but we're not as high on them as maybe they've been in the past. But if Derrick Henry is healthy the whole year and they can feed him the rock that they had been trying to do 2 years ago and last year until he got hurt, they're a tough team to beat. So that's not an easy game for them to end on. So we'll see what we get from the Cowboys, but it sounds like we all think on paper they're one of the better teams in the NFC East.
Yeah, they scored the most points in the league They scored 530 points. They had more points than the Chiefs, Buccaneers, Rams. A lot of explosive teams out there. They scored more points than anyone, and I think that's kind of what gets people. Plus, they're such a public team. They're fans all over the country, and sometimes you see those explosive offensive games and you think, wow, like what they could be, but are they going to be consistent enough? And more importantly, in the postseason, are they going to come through? This isn't a team. If they win 13 games, it won't matter to me. Their team now, they're all about the playoffs. That's the position they're in right now.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. You can go. Just ask the Patriots. No one cares if they went 16-0 because they lost the Super Bowl. It doesn't matter. Sure, maybe Patriots fans in New England care. I'm just throwing digs at my uncle right now. They might care and they can bring that up, but you didn't end the season as the champ. That's all that matters. How many people actually care that we had a few in the early part of the decade teams go 9-7 in the regular season and win the Super Bowl? No one cares if they didn't win 10 games in the regular season. They hoisted the Lombardi. That's all that matters. Yeah. So if the Cowboys go, 12-5 again, or even get better, like you said, 13-4, 14-3, whatever they end up doing, if they're not at least in the Super Bowl, it's a failure.
The good news, I think, when you look at the conferences, to me, the AFC is so much better. I just think there's so many more talented teams that it benefits Dallas, I think, in that in the NFC, I mean, Buccaneers, Rams, but I don't know after those two if there's a team that's more talented than Dallas. I really don't. I mean, I'm not as high on the Packers this year. I know they still have Aaron Rodgers, but you don't have Devontae Adams anymore. I mean, the Saints don't have Drew Brees anymore. I think being in the NFC, there's just not as many quality teams that you see in the AFC. Dallas should win at least one playoff game. They really should, but it's just the trust factor. I just can't.
All right, well, let's get to the piece de resistance here and the Philadelphia Eagles, because they were 9-8 last year. I think it's hard for me to remember year to year what we were thinking, but I think there were a lot of people that thought the Eagles could make some noise, and they ended up, I think, by midseason and later being better than they expected and made the playoffs. Didn't look great in the playoffs, kind of got embarrassed by the Buccaneers, but it was a step in the right direction, and that set up this offseason that has now, we heard some of the allegory about Dream Team 2.0. That was a disaster the first time they did it, a decade ago now, or whenever that was. But it feels a little different this time. But in the end, it's all going to come down to what kind of improvement and maturity has Jalen Hurts accomplished in this offseason and in training camp once the real balls start flying here in week one. It's going to come down to that. So all the flash, all the good draft picks and the acquisition of A.J. Brown and everything that's happened, is it going to matter if Jalen Hurts doesn't take the next step? So the Eagles are fascinating to me. I feel like they should be better than 9-8 this year. They should be pushing Dallas for tops in the division. But Paul, what do you think about our hometown Eagles here entering 2022?
In politics, we've all heard that phrase, "It's the economy, stupid." Well, with the Eagles, it's Hurts, stupid. I mean, that's all it is. The whole season to me rides on him. I mean, it really does. I love the offseason moves. I mean, I thought they were fantastic. They had certain areas that they needed to address, and I think they addressed every one. A.J. Brown, perfect fit, because you have Devontae Smith, who's more of the slender route runner, shifty, can do things differently than a more physical TO type receiver. Which
I thought you were talking about Jalen Reagor there for a second.
Oh, who's that?
Why are you the way that you are?
Never heard of that guy.
Man, imagine if this team had DK Metcalf or Justin Jefferson.
Oh my God.
Was there an over-under on the amount of time until you mentioned Justin Jefferson?
No, there wasn't.
Yeah.
There wasn't. I just, every time we talk about this, Justin and I sitting here watching the draft and just seeing Justin Jefferson sit there and they don't take it. I thought Justin was going to jump out of his chair and punch the ceiling, and not in celebration, out of anger. And man, did that come to fruition.
Yeah.
If it would have happened, everyone would understand it, because it was just mind-boggling then, and it's still head-scratching now. But anyways, we're moved on.
I thought they needed another receiver, and they needed a physical receiver, and they got one in A.J. Brown. Plus, you have Dallas Goedert at tight end, who I think's really good. I think was overshadowed a little bit when they still had Zach Ertz. Ertz is gone out to Arizona, so now it's Goddard in there. I mean, they have weapons. We talked about our buddy Ross Tucker. He does offensive line rankings, which I love to look at. Same with Phil Steele for college football fans. Phil puts out the best college football magazine that you'll find out there. I had him on my radio show for, 15 years. Really good guy. But look at those offensive line. I know it's not the sexy thing to do, but that's how you have a running game. That's how you keep your quarterback upright. That's how you give the quarterback time to throw to players like Brown and Smith and Goddard. Ross ranked the Eagles' offensive line number 1 in the National Football League. So the pieces are there. They needed a pass rusher. They got Hassan Reddick, who has 23 and a half sacks over the last 2 seasons, played his college football at Temple. He's been very productive. They needed another corner to play opposite Darius Slay, who had a really nice season. They go out and get James Bradbury, who over the last 3 years, I think he has 10 picks, was with the Giants most recently. So I really added a linebacker too. I really like what they did in the offseason, and their draft was good. I don't pay as much attention to rookies, though, because I just think usually it takes them more time to develop. So that's why I'm focusing more on Reddick and Brown and Bradbury. But if Hurts can't throw the ball, if he's not accurate, the NFL game is still played in the pocket. I mean, it's great to be elusive like he is. That's a bonus. It's nice on a 3rd and 3 or 4 or 5 when he can take off and run and pick up that first down, keep a drive alive. That's a great luxury. But I still don't think you win ultimately if you are not accurate in the pocket. And that's what he has to get better at. If he is, I mean, this team could be really good. And again, they're playing in a bad division, with Washington and the Giants in there. So I like what the Eagles did. I am picking them to win the division this year.
So, Justin, before I let you chime in on this, we talked about Dallas had won the division, so they have the number 1 teams in the corresponding divisions, the way the NFL sets that up. So they have the defending division champs on their schedule. And you mentioned NFC East is one of the weaker divisions, so you get to play each of those teams twice. I believe the Eagles have one of, if not the easiest schedule in the NFL this year, depending on the metrics you're using. But it's an easier schedule. They don't have to play those number 1 teams. Right out of the gate, the Eagles' schedule goes Lions, Vikings, Commanders, Jaguars, and then you hit Cardinals and Cowboys before the bye. Those are 4 winnable games out of the gate. If the Eagles are for real, they should go 4-0 in those games, to me. Like, if this is the team that's going to win the division and contend for an NFC championship, you can't drop any of those games. Not saying that the Vikings game should be an easy game, because I think the Vikings are, even if they're an average team, that could be a tough game, because what kind of Kirk Cousins you're going to get? What kind of offensive spectacle can they put on in Philadelphia? But Lions, Commanders, Jaguars, those have to slam dunk wins before you go to Arizona and host Dallas. The first 6 weeks of the season should set the tone for this team.
Yeah.
But the Eagles don't have that tough of a schedule. I mean, even
they have the Bears.
At the end of the year,
Bears are going to be horrible. That's one of my favorite underplays. And you can still find Bears under 6.5.
Oh, I take that.
I have a lot of respect for the odds makers. I don't know what they're thinking here. I think the Bears are going to be horrendous.
I think Justin and I said 4 or 5 wins.
Yeah,
so we would be right
there.
there.
You can still
with
find 6.5. Now it's a little bit juiced now to the under, but it's a good point about the Eagles' schedule.
So their last 5 games are at the Giants, at the Bears, at the Cowboys, and then host Saints and Giants. Again, not awful. Like those, there's a bunch of winnable games there.
I mean, you got Jameis Winston now as the quarterback of the Saints.
If he's even healthy or not reverting back to Buccaneers, Jameis, we've seen him play better with New Orleans. He started the year last year very, very strong before he got injured. What is that Saints team going to be like at the end of the year? So there are hard games in there. They have to play the Packers and the Titans, which they get back to back, but both in Philly. But the schedule is set up, and their offseason moves have set them up to be a defining force in not just the NFC East, but I think in the conference in general. Does that mean they're going to be able to batter the AFC teams that you have mentioned how much better it looks like the AFC may be? But in the end, it always comes down to that cliche: it's one game. What can you give me one game? So if the Eagles are good enough to win the division, win the NFC, they could easily end up winning the Super Bowl. But again, it does come down to the quarterback. Jalen Hurts is
that a hot take in July from Joe?
Oh, not from me. No.
Eagles in the Super Bowl.
I'm just saying. I understand why people are thinking that, are saying that. Yeah. I'm not ready to go there. We'll find out at the end of the show where I'm going. So, but okay, Justin, we'll give you the the mic now, and you let us know what's going on with the Eagles this year.
Yeah, I'm really high on the Eagles, which scares me to death because I like to set the bar low and then hopefully be pleasantly surprised. But I'm just I think Paul talked about the improvements they made, and I saw an interesting tweet the other day. I do not remember who sent it out, but it said that they think that like getting embarrassed by the Buccaneers was maybe the best thing that could happen, because if they lose a close game to the Buccaneers, then meet with the current roster and kind of see what we can do. But like when you watch that game, you realize these teams are not like the same. Like they're not. And Tom Brady aside, like those teams were not the same. So because of that, like they kind of maybe force their hand a little bit in order to go, I don't want to say go all in, but make the changes that needed to be made in order to see if this team can continue to move in the right direction. I agree as well. It's going to come down to Hurts. And the thing that the way I kind of feel about it is I feel like they've created a perfect situation for him. They've added offensive weapons. They have a great offensive line. They've strengthened up a little bit on defense. Like you can't really ask for more if you are Jalen Hurts for like an opportunity to succeed. And because of that, I think he is going to take a step forward. Now, I'm not saying I think he's going to be like a top 5 quarterback or anything. Maybe down the road if we see continued improvement, but the Eagles, as the roster exists right now, I don't necessarily know that they need him to be top 5. If he can be in the top half and pushing that like 10th spot, that would be a big step from last year, in my opinion. And that's where you start to see, oh man, they've got a good quarterback, in the top third of quarterbacks, and they've got this complete roster that they were able to build out this year. That's where I start to think maybe this team can put it together and make a run at the division. But it is going to come down to Hurts, because if he is kind of plateaued and kind of the same, well, then the Eagles with that draft capital are going to be looking to get C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young or one of those guys.
Will Levis.
And oh gosh, I almost threw up on my phone right now. And that's not a statement on Will Levis. That's just
you don't want the Eagles to be that bad to have to draft someone that was a Penn Stater and then goes on to be a top 5 pick.
Maybe they could trade all their first round. Maybe they could trade all their first round picks to Pittsburgh and get Kenny Pickett from them.
Oh, yeah, you'd love that.
That would be worse. That would be the worst case scenario. But yeah, so we'll see. But I'm high on the potential. And is that blind optimism and homerism coming through? Absolutely, 100%. I will own that it is. It's July. What else are we going to be except blindly optimistic about our football team?
Right. Well, it's that commercial. Everyone's 0-0, right? Everyone's 0-0.
That's right.
Every team can win the Super Bowl. Some teams, if you told them that or their fans say that to you, you might laugh at them. But everyone can say, hey, it's a brand new season that's just getting kicked off. So, well, Justin, I'm glad you could join us to talk most of the NFC East. I do have your picks for everything, and I'll get those in here for you. But I appreciate it, and
awesome.
Thanks for stopping by for a bit.
Oh, thanks. Yep, no problem. See you guys.
All right, have a good one. All right, so that was co-host Justin joining us for a bit. Glad he could talk and get through the Eagles. We'll cover the Giants for him, and I'll just jump in right away that he does have the Giants in last place in the NFC East.
Not a surprise.
At 6-11, which is actually an improvement from last year because they were 4-13 a year ago, and they're just a mess. I don't know what else really to say. It's been tough. They're on another new head coach.
You didn't like that quarterback sneak call?
No.
Oh man.
Brian Dable now is the head coach with the New York Football Giants.
He was with the Bills.
He was with the Bills. I thought for a bit that he might be the new Miami Dolphins head coach before he went to the Giants, but they just it's a quarterback driven league. And when you look at the NFC East, I don't think it's a hot take to say that Daniel Jones is the worst quarterback in the NFC East. I know people maybe someone want to argue it's Carson Wentz. I doubt there's anyone that would pick him over Jalen Hurts.
No.
And no one should be picking him over Dak Prescott
No.
because at least he's shown what he can do, especially when healthy. So when you have the worst quarterback in the division, it's tough for that team to not be the worst team in the division unless the surrounding components are better than the sum of their parts. And the Giants are trying, but they've made too many missteps. As much as I hate Saquon Barkley being injured and not being up to snuff, because when he's on, he's electric. But he just hasn't been able to prove it because of injuries the last few years. And I hope that's not his defining characteristic. I hope that he can rebound. But I just look at that team, and are they better than 4 wins? Maybe, but are they even a 500 team? I don't think they're getting to
Not
7,
close.
8 wins.
Not close.
So there were 4. Could they win? Like Justin had him. What did I say? 6 wins. I could see that this year, but I don't know. I'm not high on the Giants. I just think they keep making free agency mistakes, draft mistakes. I mean, they just released James Bradbury, and now he signs with the rival Eagles. I know maybe he wasn't living up to the contract, but you got to think that the Giants didn't have much better performers there. Why? It really boggles my mind what New York is doing. But where are you with the G-men?
I mean, they're embarrassing. They really are. And in a league that has a lot of parity, we always hear about any given Sunday and all these upsets that happen in the NFL and how so many games are decided by, 3 points or less. To only win 4 games, that's hard to do. I mean, you have to be really, really bad. And it got to a point last season where they were comical. I mean, they were the laughing stock of the league. I mean, they weren't competitive. And Daniel Jones, like I said before, it's about the quarterback. And if you don't have a quarterback, you can't do much in this league. So, to me, the Giants are clearly the last place team in this division.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I don't see how they're any better. And it's always tough when we do these, Paul, trying to figure out can we get there's more than that game. I was gonna say 256, 256. All the teams have to balance out to that, and it's not that anymore because they added games, but. I don't know if it makes sense to have the Giants at 6-11. I don't know if that would even be possible based on what the other ones we picked, but I feel like that's right around where they should be because I do think they're going to be better than they were last year. I feel like they can't get much worse than they were last year. I don't think Daniel Jones is the answer, unfortunately for them. But I feel like when they drafted him, everyone was like, "What are they doing?" It feels like there's a lot of teams, a lot of front office personnel, a lot of general managers that think they're smarter than everyone else. And by and large, that's generally not the case. That usually blows up in your face. And what happened with the Giants is it's just abysmal. When was the last time they made the Super Bowl? I was trying to figure, or not the Super Bowl, the playoffs. I was trying to figure out when was the last time the Giants were in the playoffs. I feel like it's been a while since they were there, but I didn't want to say it wrong, and now I wasn't able to get to it fast enough. Here we go. All right, so the Giants have not made the playoffs since 2016. So it's not as long as I thought. I was thinking it was 2011 when they last won the Super Bowl. They did make it in 2016. They went 11-5, but they lost a wild card round at the Packers. So 5 years without the playoffs. I don't think they're making it this year. So I think it's going to be 6 because I think they're the bottom dwellers in the NFC. So we can finish off now our predictions. I'm going to put Washington in 3rd in that division. They were 7-10 last year. I'm probably going to slot them in right at that spot again, 7 to 8 wins for Washington. I do think they're improved, but I almost feel like they overachieved last year, that they're going to come back and settle in. They have a few minor improvements, but since they did better than they should have last year, I don't know that they can make that leap into double-digit win territory. So I think they're a 7-8, and on a good day, maybe 9-win team, but still 3rd place in the NFC East.
Yeah, I think Washington is, like I said at the start, this division to me is a 2-horse race. It's either Dallas or Philly, and I don't think it's egregious to pick either one. I mean, you can make an argument for either of those teams, but I also think it's pretty safe to say Washington's third and the Giants are fourth.
Yes, and then all it comes down to then is what do we think about the two other teams? Just to be clear, Justin also picked Washington in third at 7-10. I'm going to buck Justin, as you heard Justin talk very highly of the Eagles. No disrespect to him or the Eagles fans in the area. I don't think the Eagles in the regular season are better than Dallas. I feel like that's something I need to see it happen. I know they make great offseason acquisitions, and they have one of the best, if not like Ross Tucker said, the most elite offensive line in the league. I need to see a little more. They were 9-8 last year. Dallas was 12-5. That's a 3-game difference there. Do I think the Eagles can win the division? Absolutely. I'm going to peg them at 11-6, so 2-game improvement. I'm going to actually have them probably tied with Dallas because I'm not sure I'm ready to say Dallas is a 12-win team again, especially with the schedule they have. Right. But I think Dallas is going to take the tiebreaker. They probably split the regular season series, but Dallas is going to have that NFC head-to-head and put whatever the opponent tiebreaker is. So I'm going to give the edge to Dallas ever so slightly in the regular season over Philadelphia. So Philly's my number 2. Dallas is my number 1 in the NFC East. Are you with me or are you with Justin? That's what it comes down to.
I'm putting the Eagles as the division champs. And I'm hesitant to do it just because of Hurts and how much quarterback play drives this league. But I love what I think they clearly improved in the offseason. And I'm not even going to talk about the draft picks. I don't think you have to. With Brown, Reddick, and Bradbury, those are big time additions. Kelsey coming back. There was some speculation he might retire.
Well, they even drafted basically his replacement
right.
For the future.
Right. So they have him back. I don't think Dallas had anywhere near that type of offseason. I do think Dak obviously is a more proven quarterback than Hurts is. But you talked about the schedule in there. I think clearly the Eagles have the easier schedule of the two. I think it'll be really close. Like I said, and the odds say that. Dallas is plus 135 to win the division. Philly's plus 165. It's very close. But I'm going to go with the Eagles here. Better offseason. Still a question mark with the head coach, but you could say the same about McCarthy. So I think the other moves that they made, hopefully you see improvement now from Hurts. I mean but I don't see a whole lot of other weaknesses with the Eagles. I mean, I think they needed help on the defensive line. They drafted the mammoth D tackle from Georgia, Jordan Davis, yeah. Right, and then getting Reddick. Now I keep reading these stories about him in coverage. Please. I mean, save it. He should not be in coverage.
Well, I mean, they have him listed at linebacker and playing stand up, but you got to think that they're going to use him more as a pass rusher.
He's a downhill, get after the quarterback guy. Like I said, the last 2 years he has 23.5 sacks. So it might be trendy and cool to say how good he is in coverage. That's not where he's at his best. Right. And if you want to utilize your players in the best way possible, so he should be getting after the quarterback, but. I'm going to have the Eagles winning the division. I still think Dallas is a playoff team.
So Justin had the Cowboys at 11-6 and the Eagles at 12-5. My dad let me know that he agrees with me. He has Dallas, Philly, Giants, Washington, and I do have.
He put the Giants ahead of Washington.
Sorry, no, he did. He did not. Dallas, Philly, Washington, Giants.
Okay.
I misread that from him. But my uncle did email. I won't be able to get to his entire email tonight, most likely. But he is right here, actually, with my dad and I. My uncle, the Patriots fan, is going Cowboys 1, Eagles 2, Commanders 3rd, Giants 4th. And he says Daniel Jones not the answer at quarterback. Commanders are getting better but need work. Eagles, he loves the A.J. Brown pickup, but it's not enough. Cowboys, he's saying that, and he's like to keep his brother Bill happy, my dad. And he says, sorry, Justin. But now we get to move on to his and my domain, the AFC East. as we get to talk about my Dolphins, his Patriots. But they're both afterthoughts to the defending division champ and odds-on Super Bowl favorite, the Buffalo Bills. Oh, it really pains me to say that, especially because our friend Adam Filer is a Buffalo Bills fan, and I take no joy in Adam being happy about his sports teams. But the Bills are they seem to be the paper juggernaut. Everyone was liking them last year. I think a lot of people are still hedging their bets, saying probably the Chiefs, but the Bills are really good. And man, that could be a good game if they meet. Spoiler, that was a great game when they met.
One of the best ever.
Unfortunately, it wasn't in the AFC Championship game. We got that a week later, and the Bengals upset the Chiefs. But Buffalo just looks like they're as good, if not better, entering the 2022 season. Do you have the odds on them? Because they're pretty high.
Yeah, so for the division, they're minus 225. So the only team that is a bigger favorite to win the division is the Bucks, who are minus 250 to win the South. I don't think anybody is surprised at that. With Brady back, no Breeze. The Saints are the second choice in the South at plus 310.
Yeah,
Panthers, Falcons.
that all makes sense.
Don't need to worry about that. And in the East, the Bills are minus 225. They have the Dolphins at plus 450. Patriots at plus 500.
Oh.
And then the Jets at plus 2,200. If you want to take a shot.
Interesting.
At the Jets win the division.
Well, there's a lot to talk about there.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I think, and the Bills are also the Super Bowl favorite.
That's what I was going to say.
So they are plus 600 to win the Super Bowl. The Bucks are the second choice, which I don't think surprises people, at plus 700. But it does show you just how much people like the Bills, because Tom Brady gets action.
Right.
You know, people like to bet on him. And the Bills are still the favorite. Then you have the Chiefs and the Packers at plus 1,000. I don't get all the love for Green Bay. For them to be tied for the third choice, I don't see that. But Aaron Rodgers moves the needle. Rams plus 1,100, Chargers plus 1,400, and then the Niners and Broncos are plus 1,600. So those are the top 8.
Well, there you go.
For the Super Bowl.
Coach O'Neal, there's your Broncos mention.
Yeah.
We want to make sure the Denver Broncos got some love.
Russell Wilson now?
Shout out in Paul's Super Bowl odds there. But we'll probably be talking about Denver at the very end, right before we sign off, when we talk about playoffs and maybe the Super Bowl. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But in the AFC, the Buffalo Bills are the cream of the crop. They're the one right at the top, because I don't think, like, what did they lose? They just added some. Now, I know Von Miller's not the same guy he was 5 years ago, but he just won a Super Bowl with the Rams. He went and he could have chose anywhere to go. He could have re-signed with the Rams, who are one of the better teams in the NFC. He chose to go to Buffalo because he likes what's going on there. They also brought in Roger Saffold. They drafted a cornerback and a running back that everyone likes in James Cook. They didn't lose too much. I don't.
Yeah, where's the weakness?
Right,
I mean,
I think that's the problem.
Yeah.
For me as a Dolphins fan, that's the nightmare. The Bills have been taking it to my Dolphins so much that it's felt like the mid '90s all over again, when the Bills went to 4 straight Super Bowls. They have an interesting schedule to start the year. They have to go to SoFi and play the Rams in Week 1. Then
that's a great game. Then
they host the Titans the next week before going to Miami and Baltimore in back-to-back weeks. So 3 of their first 4 games are on the road. And then they just have Pittsburgh and Kansas City. So
Pittsburgh will take a step back, but Kansas City.
Pittsburgh beat Buffalo in Buffalo last year.
Yeah.
Now I know Buffalo took it to them then in the playoffs, right? I think that.
And who's your Steelers quarterback?
Right, but Ben Roethlisberger was at 50% of what he was just 3 years ago. You know.
But those other I mean, that's not easy, right there.
Oh, and then after their bye week, they have the Packers.
Yeah, I mean, their schedule. Compare their schedule to last year. It's night and day.
They're going to earn it for sure.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Buffalo, but they are definitely odds-on favorite. They end the year from all of December into January. They go at New England, host the Jets and Dolphins, go to Chicago, go to Cincinnati, and finish with New England at home.
That is a tough schedule.
So yeah, the only games I didn't mention then were Jets, Vikings, basically the easy games, the middle of the year. after they come back from their bye and play the Packers the night before Halloween, they have Jets, Vikings, Browns, Lions.
And see, I don't consider Vikings an easy game.
No,
Yeah.
I shouldn't say. That was the
Yeah.
group of games left,
Right.
and that's Minnesota, probably the toughest game in there, depending on what's going on with Deshaun Watson. But we are not getting into that.
No.
I'm not touching that stuff tonight. We got plenty of other stuff to say. But Buffalo was 11-6 last year. They were seconds away from making the AFC Championship game. And Josh Allen has really come into his own. They just phenomenal talent all around. They've only gotten better. And the pressure is on them because everyone expects them to be good. They lived up to it last year. 11 wins, dueling with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. Just came up a little bit short, and I'm sure that's been driving them all off season. So I would be surprised if Buffalo isn't a 11, 12, 13 win team, except for that schedule. It's just really, really tough. So they might match that 11 win total, but be a better team because of it, because they had to really duke it out with some of those teams. Okay, let's talk about my Dolphins. Let's do this.
Big
So
sigh there.
it's just, well, Paul, growing up a Dolphins fan in Philadelphia was unique, as you can imagine, but they were good when I was younger. Dan Marino,
Mark
days,
Duper, Mark Clayton.
and that was the very beginning of when I remember the early 90s team. 92, 93 is like when I can remember cheering for the Dolphins, and it really came big time when the last couple years of Don Shula and Dan Marino with Jimmy Johnson. Like those are the teams that I was watching, the mid 90s to the late 90s. I was actually in Philadelphia when Don Shula broke the wins record to cheer the Dolphins against the Eagles. Dolphins were on their third string quarterback as Dan Marino had torn his Achilles and missed most of the year. And Scott Mitchell was the backup, and he got in. I think Doug Peterson was the quarterback for the Dolphins in that game, I think. So growing up, though, when I was younger, I was like, I got plenty of time to see the Dolphins win the Super Bowl. Look how good they've been. While I was younger, they were constantly winning 10 games, winning divisions, making the playoffs. They went to, I think, back-to-back AFC Championship games. Losing to the Bills. There were annoyances and grievances, sure, but they were good.
Right.
And even right after Marino left, they were still good with Jay Fiedler for a couple years. But then ever since that, it's been a little rough. It's been 2 decades of average football at best, sometimes awful football.
What's 20 years amongst
right
friends?
Exactly. So it's been, and what makes it so much worse is that in that 20-year time period, one of their rivals became the greatest dynasty in the history of the NFL, and I just have family up there to remind me of it constantly. It's been rough. It's been a rough 2 decades, and every year I think that they're going to take another step, that just something happens. So, I want to say I'm cautiously optimistic this year, but I don't know that I am. I'm not part of that Tua Anon people that are just hyping him up ridiculous amounts, but I'm also not someone who thinks he's trash. I want to see him show me something, and there's something there, but it needs to be more consistent. It needs to take more risks at the right time, and he needs to stay healthy. And, I just don't know if that all can happen, if it can all come together. Obviously, everyone's talking about the acquisition of Tyreek Hill.
Right.
Maybe that'll help. I don't know. I mean, he's doing his best to hype him up. I hope what he's saying is even half true, because it would be a step in the right direction. They have pieces on offense to make some noise.
Definitely.
And it will, every team we've talked about, will come down to the quarterback. What's Tua going to get you? And I think most people would say that he's the third best quarterback in the division. I think a lot of people would put him behind Mac Jones. Obviously, Josh Allen is above everyone else.
Yeah.
Then it comes down to what do you like? What do you expect the leap to happen this year? Because everyone, by and large, was happy with what Mac Jones did last year as a rookie. It's Patriots Dolphins for that number 2 spot in the AFC East. For my mental sake, I need them to beat the Patriots this year. They beat them twice last year. So people sell Miami short because of what happened in the offseason with Flores and everything and the changeover. I feel like that finally got pushed aside when the Tyreek Hill news broke and everything. Not many people are talking about the coach stuff. I'll be honest, when McDonald was hired, he was like my last choice. I was like, that's not the guy I want. That's because I wanted Dable was one of the guys that I wanted. But thankfully, the more that I listened to him and learned about him and hear the players talk about him, I come around a little bit. But talk is cheap. I need to see results. So, I'll say I'm cautiously optimistic, but I feel like I'm going to get hurt again. So that's where I'm at, Paul. What do you think about the Dolphins?
I mean, I love their skill position player. It's a similar situation to the Eagles, I think. The weapons are there now around Tua. He's just got to get the job done. I mean, Tyreek Hill is insanely fast, and because of his speed, there's always that threat that he's going to take the top off the defense. So he attracts so much attention. He has to be a nightmare for a defensive coordinator trying to figure out that week how you're going to contain him. But they have other players too. I mean, those skilled players are fine. Here's the one difference, though. We were talking about Ross Tucker's offensive line ratings. He has Miami number 20.
Yeah, I was going to say bottom third.
That's a concern. Especially you talk about trying to keep Tua healthy. And then you don't have a good offensive line. That's definitely a concern. The Patriots, by the way, he has as the number 9 offensive line. So
where do they have the Bills? Do you know?
I don't know. Yeah. I'm not sure.
I had his list up. I should have looked more in depth. But
what surprised me about looking back at the Patriots, and I mean, it's still Belichick, but I wonder how they do it. So I like to look at plus minus because so many teams are close in the NFL. They were plus 159 on the season. The Patriots. Only the Bills had a better plus minus a year ago. The Bills in the AFC. The Bills were plus 194. And it just really surprised me to see that type of differential with New England. It's almost a coin flip to me as far as who's second and who's third. The Jets, people are excited about their draft and things like that. They're not a player. I mean, they're not a contender.
Have you seen anything about the Jets? People, I thought it was in reference to the betting market too. That there's always that surprise team each year, and last year was the Bengals, and people are trying to draw the connection and connect the dots that the Burrow leap with the Bengals is what the Jets are going to see this year, and people were like putting money on the Jets to win the division and have like a Bengals turnaround.
Yeah,
I don't see that.
Not in the least. The one team that, and it's an NFC team that I know some sharp bettors do like, and this isn't even so much as to make the playoffs, but just going over their projected win total, is the Lions. They think they're up front. They're very good on both sides of the football. So that's one team. If you're looking for a true sleeper, I would look at the Lions in the NFC. But the Jets have. We don't need to even get into them.
Justin and I were talked about, not in a betting market, but just saying how we had the Lions in third. Behind the Packers and Vikings, but saying that we could see them hitting 500 this year. And hey, a couple things go right, and the Vikings or Packers falter. Not saying they win the division, but what if they get to 9 wins and sneak into the playoffs? Like I think that things are progressing there. They're getting better. They're soon going to need a new quarterback though, because they're not sticking with Goff forever. He's not going to win them too much more, but he's a serviceable and can win them some games. And I do think that they're going to surprise some teams this year. But yeah, in the AFC East, I've been looking a lot at these schedules, and the Dolphins' first 4 weeks are Patriots, Ravens, Bills, Bengals.
Now, okay, so where are those at?
Miami, Baltimore, Miami, Cincinnati.
To me, that's 1 and 3.
I know. Well, I'm like, in a good day, I'm hopeful that they can win one of those 4 games.
That's rough.
Wow. Yeah, it's so honestly, of those four, New England might be the one that they should win or could win because they played the Ravens awful all the time. They cannot beat Baltimore for whatever reason it is. I don't know if it's a John Harbaugh thing or what. They've been playing Buffalo terrible since Josh Allen got there. And I don't know what to think about the Bengals. I don't think they're going to have as much success as they had last year, even though they're better.
Yeah.
Like, I think they're better on paper, but I feel like that was a lot of flash in the pan and some good mojo for them. But I that's still a tough game. Could Miami win it? Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's not like a few years ago that should have been a guaranteed win, and that's not the case anymore. So yeah, I don't like that the season starts off like that. Oh, I called him McDonald. It's Mike McDaniel. I can't even get my own coach's name right.
Are you hungry?
Yeah,
Had
I'm
a
hangry.
cheeseburger
I'm
on your-
hangry. But then they finished the year with Buffalo, Green Bay, New England, and the Jets. Now, thankfully, if Miami needs to win the last game of the year, hopefully you're thinking that's a softball for them. It should. I mean, I think it should be because I have the Jets being the worst team in the AFC East by a wide margin too. Like it's the Bills, then it's the Dolphins, Patriots, wherever you want to go there, and then it's the Jets.
Yeah, it's not close.
So, so I don't like that. But Miami, yeah, Miami. I mean, there's a lot of hope there, and I'm excited.
But you look at the Patriots roster, and I mean, compare their weapons, the skill position guys. I wonder sometimes how New England does it.
Don't we all?
Who stands out to you at the skill positions with New England?
Of right now?
Yeah, I mean, compare them to my. If you're objective, okay, let's say you're a general manager of Team X, and you can take the skill position players.
Oh, you're taking Miami every day of the week,
and
night
you
and
wouldn't
day.
think twice. Yeah,
well,
in a second,
So right now, just for argument's sake, we'll say Mac and Tua are a push. Just for argument's sake, we'll just do that. I know because I know there's some people that would pick Tua, and there's plenty that would pick Mac. So just for argument's sake, we'll say it's a push. They're way different types of quarterbacks, but then you look in the backfield. Damian Harris, Ramondre Stevenson are the Patriots' two guys. And
the Patriots always seem to use 18 different running backs.
Right. They do. What's going on in Miami? They seem to have just a collection of guys. They signed Chase Edmonds. Could he end up being the guy? They have Sony Michel, Raheem Mostert, Salvin Ahmed, and Myles Gaskin. Someone there's gonna get the boot. But again, maybe you say it's a push there.
But now let's look at wide receiver,
and even tight ends, depending on what you're looking for. The Dolphins are now trotting out Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle as their number two, or their top two guys. They just signed Mohamed Sanu, and they brought in Cedric Wilson and have Preston Williams. Those are their five. And then Gesicki is the receiving tight end that you're talking about in terms of, making noise on offense. Wide receiver in New England, either they just jettisoned another failed wide receiver in N'Keal Harry. I mean, who's the guy? Matthew Slater's a special teams guy. He's not an offensive guy. They're taking a Dolphins cast-off in Devontae Parker probably as their go-to guy. And then they have Jacoby Myers, Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Aguilar. I mean, they can't hold a candle to the potential of Waddle and Hill. And now, I know Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith have had their moments at times, but
they're solid.
I still think you probably pick Gesicki over him, especially in a contract year, since he was franchise tagged and didn't sign a long-term contract. Guys that enter that type of situation generally have a pretty good year. But again, I still, even looking at it like that, now you did mention Patriots have the number 9 ranked offensive line. Miami's down at 20. So that can make a huge difference and offset the skill positions. But it's like if you take Miami's wide receivers and tight ends and put them in New England, you feel like New England's now winning 2 or 3 more games.
Definitely. Yeah.
And yet it'll still be, for a better part of the year, me being like, how is New England still winning these games? How is this still happening to me? Yeah, it's just rough. But looking at New England's schedule, so we talked about they have to go to Miami, which has been a bit of kryptonite for them, is playing the Dolphins. Even in this 2-decade-long dominance the Patriots had by and large over the AFC East, they've always had, especially Tom Brady, has had trouble beating Miami especially when it's in South Florida. So they have to open there. Miami beat them in game 1 last year.
Yeah.
Then
By the way, I know a lot of pros. You're not going to like to hear this, Joe. They absolutely love New England in that game. And in fact, that line has moved significantly.
Has it?
Because
Oh, God.
people really hammered because of the revenge factor there. But
well, New England goes to Pittsburgh in week 2, and then they have the Ravens and Packers in weeks 3 and 4. So New England, interesting start to the year. Probably also looking at the Miami game as, man, we need to get off right on the right foot and win that game because we got Steelers, Ravens, Packers. And I know Steelers are not the same team as they've been recently, but Ravens, Packers right there in weeks 3 and 4.
where are the Ravens and Packers games?
Ravens is at Gillette, but Packers is at Lambeau. So 3 of their first 4 games are on the road. So tough way for them to start. And then to end the year, they've got Buffalo at Gillette, on the road at Arizona and Las Vegas, and then Cincinnati and Miami at home, followed by a season finale in Buffalo. I'm so excited for the NFL because there's so many good games each week. Like looking at the schedule, there's at least 3 to 5 games each week that I'm like, I have no idea how it's going to be, but it's going to be a great game.
Well, and like I was talking about the AFC too. Now, you move Russell Wilson to Denver. I mean, Denver had a good defense. They've had incompetent quarterback play forever. That's not the case anymore. I mean, I look at that AFC West. There's not a bad team in there.
Nope.
You know, I put the Raiders.
I was just gonna say
4th, and going back to the line, their offensive line is a gigantic question mark. But there's talent there. Denver obviously gets much better when you add Russell Wilson. The Chargers I like a lot, and the Chiefs. I don't know about you. I can't get over that they were up 21-3 in the AFC Championship game and lost. Now, part of that is because I had a futures wager on the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl from before the season started. So I was extremely frustrated because I could have hedged that and done something with the Rams in the Super Bowl and would have won either way. But yeah, 21-3 and they blew that. But that's just that division. I mean, and the Colts, I think, Matt Ryan now takes over there. He's not great, but he's a veteran. Ravens, Bengals in the North, the Browns. But then the East, Bills are the Super Bowl favorite, and the Dolphins and Patriots are solid teams. So, yeah, there's going to be good games all the time.
So, to wrap up, we sort of touched on the Jets. We don't expect much from them.
No.
They did have a great draft, as you alluded to. Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, Jermaine Johnson, Breece Hall, Jeremy Ruckert were their first 5 picks. All really good, highly ranked players. But again, I don't know that they're enough to make a huge dent this year because they're coming off just such a tough season last year. How many games did they win last year? 4-13. They were 2-14 in 2020. They were 4-13 last year. So even if they win 2 more games, you're still talking 6-11.
And their plus minus was minus 194.
That's a big hole to dig out of. That's a big hole. So they're building something in New York. Again, it comes down to the quarterback. Is Zach Wilson going to be the guy? The jury is out on that one. We'll see what happens this year. If he takes a huge step, maybe they will be ready to fight a year from now. But I just don't see it happening this year. Justin had Jets, Patriots, Dolphins, Bills. And I know that because he had the Bills winning the East and the Dolphins as a wild card. So he did leave the Patriots out. Thank you, Justin. That makes me feel good. So we both had Jets 4. I'm saying probably 5-6 wins for them. That would be my guess. See, this is now I get to what I want to do here. Do I want to be pleasantly surprised and hedge my bets and put Miami 3rd and then hope they can beat the Patriots? I'm generally a pessimist, so I'm going to put Miami in 3rd. They were 9-8 last year. I think they can get there again. They should probably go 10-7. So I'll 9-10 wins. In 30 seconds, you'll find out maybe if I have them as a wild card. But I'll put New England there at about 10-7 as well. 10-11 wins for the Patriots. But I still think Buffalo's the team to beat. Honestly, they got unique and interesting schedule the Bills do have. I'll put them at 12-5, Buffalo. So I don't know if that's how you see it, but
I think first and fourth place there are obvious. You know, the Bills first, Jets fourth. The interesting part is who's second and who's third, and if they're a wild card team. You know, the offensive line gets overlooked so much, and how about the head coach factor?
Mhm.
I mean, that's got to be a gigantic check mark in favor of New England. So while I like what Miami did, yes, you know, getting Tyreek Hill, I like their weapons, but you know, going against Belichick, that's
people have
tough.
lost a lot of money
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah, it's just not a great proposition. So I think it's very close. If someone told me they have the Dolphins finishing second, I wouldn't, you know, like fall off my chair. I mean, you know, but I would put New England second, Miami third.
My dad said the same thing as I did, and that you did. Buffalo, New England, Miami, and the Jets 1-4 there in the AFC East. So I believe that's also exactly what my uncle had: Bills, Patriots, Dolphins, Jets. So we're all in agreement there on the AFC East. Justin's the only outlier. He did flip-flop the Dolphins and Patriots, but as we said, I don't think anyone would be shocked to see either team there in second place. But I think the edge goes to New England right now, and coaching is a huge reason for that. So. All right. Who would be your wild cards? You know, we didn't get into all your division winners, but who are some other teams that you think could make it in the NFC and AFC?
We'll start NFC. My three wild cards, and this will surprise the people. I actually have the Vikings winning the North.
Oh, you have Vikings upsetting the Packers.
Yeah,
then,
I do.
unseating them.
So I have the Packers as a wild card.
Okay.
I have the Niners and the Cowboys as my wild card teams.
And you have Rams, Eagles winning those divisions.
Yeah.
Then. Okay.
Vikings winning the North, and the Bucks obviously
Bucks
winning
in the South.
the
Yeah, that
South.
makes sense.
So those are my seven from the NFC, and I don't think anything is crazy there. Maybe the Vikings winning that division. Now Vikings are plus 265. Packers are minus 190 on DraftKings to win that division. Losing Devontae Adams at wide receiver. I mean, I know they have Rodgers and he's awesome, but I don't know. I'm not as high on Green Bay this year. And I look at we talk about the weapons the Dolphins have. Look what Cousins has to work with in Minnesota. It's ridiculous.
Jefferson and Thielen. Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's unreal. So if he has time to throw,
is their defense going to be any good? That's the big question for them.
Yeah. But that was one, I guess, that might be unexpected.
I don't think it's crazy though. Justin and I had Minnesota firmly in second place there in the NFC North.
Yeah.
And potential to be a wild card, which spoiler, Justin has them as a wild card. He went Rams, Bucks, Packers, Eagles as his division champs. And then his wild card were the Niners, Cowboys, and Vikings. Mm-hmm. So he's right there with what you were saying.
And the Niners today just locked up Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, huge,
so that's a
huge,
done
3
deal.
years.
Yeah.
Lots of money.
Yeah, I think the guaranteed is over $50 million.
I think it was the contract for 72 or was the guarantee 72? It was something.
Yeah, the guarantee was around 50 something.
Okay, so the contract extension or however they're wording it is like for 72.5 million.
But that's a huge story for them.
Because
he is. I mean, they can use him everywhere. Catch the ball, run the ball. I mean, line him up wherever you want to put. I mean, they needed to get that resolved, and they did. And now we'll see what Trey Lance does there. But I have the Niners as a wild card.
Okay, yeah. My NFC, very similar to Justin in the division winners. We only disagreed in the East that we just talked about tonight. So I was Rams, Bucks, Packers, and then the Cowboys. I'm going to use the Eagles as one of my wild cards. And this is where it gets tough for me. I'm going to go Niners as well. It'll be interesting to see what happens with them and under Trey Lance's arm, but I still think they have so much around him that, and after what they did last year to some of those teams, and especially in the playoffs, they got so hot at the end of the year, came up just a little bit short against the Rams, but I'll put the Niners in there with the Eagles as two of the wild cards. And I feel like I'm avoiding the Cardinals like the plague right now.
Yeah, and that's another team. their offensive line, Ross's rankings, number 28. I mean,
Okay.
they're
Not good. Yeah, not good.
So you're going to see Kyler Murray again scrambling around, throwing off his back foot. Hopefully he gets those hours in.
Yeah, really.
What a
they
story
already
that
removed that from
yeah.
the
Talk about horrible
oh,
backpedaling
God,
of a story. Like everyone knew, and then for them that was a PR
that was a drop.
debacle.
Yeah,
by
awful.
yeah,
Awful.
but it shows you. And I've heard Ross talk about this. He has not heard good things about the way Kyler prepares for games.
Right,
So,
I like how there were some people spinning this as this is all like I know it was a PR issue, but like they couldn't believe that the Cardinals would do that to their quarterback. I was like, well, if he needs to do like, shouldn't you be blaming the player here? Like, okay, maybe the PR aspect, the marketing aspect wasn't great, but if the team thinks he needs to do that,
yeah, talk about a red flag.
Isn't that more of a Kyler problem?
Right.
Like, I just like Florio and Pro Football Talk, some of the stuff that he writes, man, it just boggles my mind.
Yeah.
You know, but that gets the money and the dollars, and that's how he got a job at NBC, anyways. But yeah.
So were you thinking about Cardinals as a wild card?
I waffle with them because there's talent there.
Yeah,
but I feel like they missed their window almost. I feel like they had a chance and it just fell apart. I mean, last year they started 7 or 8-0, and at one point I think we're like 11-1 or something like that, and the wheels fell off there quickly. So I was actually going to think, oh, am I going Vikings too? No, I'm going to go and be the anti-Joey and jump on the Saints. I'm going to have the Saints as my last wild card.
I mean, if
team.
Winston, I just don't trust Winston.
I don't.
But
generally
the rest
either,
of the
but
team is solid.
yeah, and that was one thing I know Ross got a lot of flack for that because he was talking about over unders with the Saints, and it was at I think like 8.5 or 9 or something like that, and he just couldn't believe the number of people that were saying, "Oh, the Saints are definitely going over," and he wasn't convinced. Not saying that they're bad or anything, but I think I'll go with the Saints there as my last NFC wildcard team. So in the AFC though, I'm going Chiefs, Colts, Ravens, Bills. That is identical to Justin.
Okay.
Justin's wild card teams were the Bengals, Chargers, and Dolphins. Mine are going to be. This is tough. I don't think it's anyone else from the South. I think it's Indianapolis and no one. I'm not high on Tennessee.
I agree.
The problem is because I have the Dolphins third, I have to take for Miami to get in, I have to take New England. So this is where I'm struggling because the AFC West is so good.
Yes. Yeah.
So I would much rather be pleasantly surprised. So I'm going to give New England a wild card. Do I leave the Bengals out there? This is tough. The AFC is like a murderer's row.
Yeah. There's so much more depth in the AFC.
Honestly, I think I might leave the Bengals out. I think I'm going to go Patriots, Broncos, in no particular order. Patriots, Broncos, and Chargers. So unfortunately, leaving the Bengals and Raiders and Dolphins out, which kills me to leave Miami out because I think they could win 10 games, but I'm not that's going to be enough.
Yeah.
I think you might have to win 11 games to get in there, and I could see the AFC West all winning 10 games if they play their non-divisional games right, because those teams are very, very talented. There's going to be some good teams not in the AFC field. So that's where I see it, and Justin sees it. What about you in the AFC?
I have Bills, Ravens, Colts as division winners. Then this is maybe a surprise. I have the Chargers actually winning the West.
Okay.
I'm really high on the Chargers. This is the third year now for Justin Herbert. I think he has all the tools. I mean, physically, he can do everything. He can run if he needs to. He averages about 5 yards a carry. He has a cannon for an arm. They had to get away from Anthony Lynn. I mean, we were talking about Mike McCarthy's blunders. Every week it seemed like I was on a Twitter rant about what Anthony Lynn's clock management or not going for 2 in the right situation. I mean, just ridiculous decision making. So they've moved on there. But last year, 38 touchdowns, only 15 picks for Justin Herbert.
Yeah, I mean, his second year was only overshadowed because of what Joe Burrow and the Bengals did.
Yeah, I mean, they always, I thought, if you look at the talent on the roster, it's like, wow, but then they have like injuries or crazy things happen to them at the end of the game.
Talk about the skill positions, Austin Eckler, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
And now they added Khalil Mack to the defense with
Yeah.
one of the Bosa brothers and
Yeah.
Derwin James back there. Like, they have so much talent. That's
They
why I
do.
had to include them
Yeah.
as a wild card.
They're one of those like off the bus teams. Like you see when they pull up in high school and
like,
you see these guys, you're
wow.
like, man, yeah. They so the talent is there. They had a couple. They struggled down the stretch. A couple overtime games that they lost. But so I actually have the Chargers winning the West,
Okay.
and then I have the Chiefs as a wild card team. I know they lost Tyreek Hill. They got Juju Smith-Schuster.
Right.
I mean, there's still going to be talent there. I'm not ready to say Andy Reid doesn't know what he's doing anymore. I don't buy that. I'm taking 3 from the West, so I
Okay.
have the Broncos as a wild card.
Okay.
I just think, and we've talked about that throughout the show about how important quarterback play was. Their defense was fine.
They're great.
The quarterback play was atrocious, and that's why they haven't been consistent. Getting Russell Wilson,
Huge.
yeah, I mean he's a leader, proven winner, and they have some weapons there. So I am actually taking Chiefs and Broncos as a wild card, and then the Bengals
Okay.
are my third.
So leaving out the Patriots
Yeah.
altogether there. So yeah,
I
mean,
only have
that's-
one from the East. The Bills are the only team I have.
and one from the North then, right? You have
one from the South.
well, and your
Colts.
division winner in the North though is
I have Baltimore.
Baltimore. Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
So you have-
Baltimore was devastated by injury. It was absurd how many players were injured. So no disrespect to Cincinnati, but
oh right, Bengals, yeah.
Baltimore is going to be healthier.
Mhm. Yeah, that's exactly what Justin and I
yeah.
harped on. Yeah, so you went Bills in the East, you went Ravens plus Bengals in the North, then you have
just Colts.
just the Colts in the South, and then you have 3 teams
Yeah.
from the West with the Chargers winning it and the
Yeah.
Chiefs and Broncos joining.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, I mentioned all those teams because who
Yeah.
do you leave out? That's what it's going to be so exciting this year to see, because 7 make it, but I think you could say 10 or 11 teams are right there going to be in the thick of it. So my uncle's NFC wild cards were Viking, Eagles, and Cardinals, which we talked about. I don't know what's going on with Arizona, but he's still high on them, though. He says he wanted it to be the 49ers, but only if Jimmy Garoppolo was still the quarterback out there. In the AFC, he also goes Chargers, Raiders, he's throwing in there. And he says, I want to say the Patriots, but I'll pick the Bengals. So he's leaving his Patriots out of the playoffs as well.
Wow.
So that's a little bit of a shock there. I saw Patriots pop up in his email, but he's going to push them aside for the Bengals.
I appreciate the objectivity.
Yeah, that's a bit of a surprise because, well, I say that homerism, but for 2 decades, the Patriots were like, why would you not pick them to win the division and the Super Bowl?
That's just being realistic.
I mean, Justin and I have been doing this show for the second half of that dynasty. We started in February 2011. So we've talked NFL since the fall of 2011 up until now. And I'm sure my uncle picked the Patriots to win the division and the Super Bowl every single time we've done this. And how many times was he wrong?
Yeah.
Not very many.
No.
But this year he's leaving them out altogether. So that's very interesting. So to wrap it up, Super Bowl, my uncle says it's going to be Tampa Bay against Buffalo, but he has his Tom Brady winning the Super Bowl one last time and then finally riding off into the sunset. So he's going Bucks over Bills. I do have Justin's here as well, and this is going to be one that'll get my dad fired up. So he has the Ravens beating the Bills in the AFC, the Eagles beating the Packers in the NFC.
What?
And then the Eagles beating the Ravens in the Super Bowl. Yes, that's right.
What?
Justin went full homer this time around and has the Eagles winning the Super Bowl, beating his mom's Baltimore Ravens to do so. So there,
Wow.
I'm going to leave that there. Justin can answer. You guys have his text and email. You can let him know. I can't handle anything else on his behalf. But Paul, what are you thinking about Super Bowl wise?
I have the Bucks, and I feel really again. I'm not that high on Green Bay. To me, the NFC Championship is Bucks Rams, but I have the Bucks in the Super Bowl, and this may surprise. So I'm putting the Chargers in the Super Bowl.
Okay.
I think
You're high on
I
Los
am.
Angeles.
I really am. So we'll see what happens there, but I have the Bucks winning it all. I mean,
Just like my uncle.
yeah,
said,
I mean, going against Brady in a big spot, that's tough to do. But I think the AFC playoffs are going to be a blast because there's so many good teams there. I mean, you could you could easily have the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. You could easily have the Bills in the Super Bowl. Um, I decided to mix it up a little bit there with the Chargers, but I have Tampa Bay beating the Chargers in the Super Bowl.
Okay. So, yeah, my NFC championship is going to be Tampa Bay over Green Bay, just because I love to see Green Bay lose in the playoffs.
They have a habit of doing that.
Exactly. It makes me feel good. So, if I don't get to watch my Dolphins in the playoffs, I take joy in watching the Packers lose in the playoffs. So that's definitely one that I'm excited for. I do think it's going to be Tampa Bay over Green Bay. I like the Rams. I am high on the Eagles and Cowboys, but I just think Tampa Bay is a step above everyone else, and I think it's going to be Tom and the Bucks. In the AFC, like you said, man, what a phenomenal January that's going to be.
Yeah.
With whatever 7 teams end up making it. Of the ones that I picked there, I'm going to have to say in the AFC title game, it's going to be. See, and I don't think Kansas City has enough to get back to that championship game. I think maybe we'll see a rematch with Buffalo in that second round. I think Buffalo's going to get the better of them. So I'm going to go Bills over Ravens. I think that's where I'm headed. I think Baltimore is going to rebound from those injuries last year, win that division, be a very good team, but I think they're going to come up short in the playoffs, and Buffalo's going to have their way with them to set up a Buccaneers-Bills Super Bowl, which is kind of honestly one of my nightmares because I don't really want Tom Brady to win another one, and I cannot have the Bills win one. So I'm going to agree with you and my uncle and say Tampa Bay comes out on top. That's honestly the lesser of two evils for me. I've said it multiple times. I've tweeted this. Tom Brady is much more likable since he left New England. I hated him as a Patriot. Like I couldn't.
I've noticed that on Twitter though.
But like he's more enjoyable. Yeah, he's much more
enjoyable
enjoyable as just like a person. Just like follow. He has this like, he can make fun of himself. He pokes fun of himself, which you didn't really see at his time in New England. So it's been very enjoyable. It's kind of been a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
So if I have to see Bucks Bills Super Bowl, I'm gonna be rooting for Tampa Bay because I've always liked Tampa Bay for whatever reason. Back with like Mike Allstott and those guys when they were playing in the late '90s, Warren Sapp and Warwick Dunn and all those. Brad Johnson when it taking them with Gruden to the Super Bowl over the Raiders. But yeah, so that's I'm gonna go Tampa Bay over Buffalo.
I think home field is going to be important in the AFC because you mentioned Chiefs, Bills, a lot of people like them. I mean, those are two big home field advantages. I mean, Kansas City is so loud. So it'll be important to see who has a better record and who could get the number 1 seed. I don't know that it's as important in the NFC because we've seen Green Bay lose at Lambeau, and Rams and Bucks. I don't know that there's a great home field advantage there. They're just good teams. But in the AFC, I think home field is going to be big.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we're set up for a really phenomenal pro football season. I'm really excited for it. As much as I love Penn State and college football, there's just something about throwing Red Zone on, following your fantasy teams, and then when you throw in the way the betting component has just changed the way things operate. It's the way Sunday football, and I got my 9-year-old daughter just said to my wife the other night, I can't wait for Sundays where I can watch football with Daddy. Like that just makes I was just like, I cannot wait for that either. I cannot wait for that either. So, well, Paul, thank you so much for joining me. I know this is a long show. I wanted to get you out because I know you got a busy day at work. You got a busy week, but I'm glad we were able to do this. You came on for the best part of the NFL preview, talking the East divisions and doing playoffs and Super Bowl. So I'm glad we got that out there. Now you're on the list where we have to have an accountability show in January sometime. So we'll obviously have you back on. We'll have you on Bulldog Hour, and we'll get you back on this show once the holidays roll around, because that's when this show will be back. We take a hiatus for the Bulldog Hour now, so you're not going to get 363 of Joe Mays and J-Raff show until sometime in November. Honestly, hopefully December, if I'm looking at it from a Wilson football perspective. I'm hoping we're doing Bulldog Hour straight into Thanksgiving and thereafter. But so that's on the docket for Justin and I next. And if you're interested in Wilson football or Pennsylvania high school football, especially in the Berks County, Lancaster, Lebanon area, join Justin and I weekly on the Bulldog Hour. We'll have some content coming out this week, but our next live show is August 14th. and I believe we'll be starting with either our player interviews or our assistant coach interviews, because the kickoff to the season is August 26th, which is, I mean, in what, 2 hours is this month.
Yeah.
So very excited for that aspect. But again, Paul, thanks for joining me here. Looking forward to having you on the Bulldog Hour soon. And best of luck to you as we head towards the high school football season.
Yeah, sure thing. The time really flew by. So this was a lot of fun. Predictions sure to fail.
always. You know, we're no experts. We just do this for fun. But we hope everyone enjoyed it. I know my dad, my uncle, my family, and our friends always like to listen to this show because, you know, most of them are Eagles fans or they're rooting against the Eagles. So either way. And we're always all rooting against the Patriots. So it's fun there. So. All right, that's it for this episode. Again, we won't be back to talk pro football until hopefully sometime in mid to late November or later. So that's it for a long time for us. But thanks for joining us. Check the archive for the rest of our NFL preview. But for Justin and Paul, I'm Joe Mays. Thanks for listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show.
That's a wrap on this episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, brought to you by Mays Sandwich Shop. You can watch each weekly episode live on Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube. Be sure to like, follow, or subscribe to the show on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. You can also rate and review us on many of these platforms as well. We'd love to hear from you. Send your email to the Mays Sandwich Shop inbox at joemaysandjraff@gmail.com. The Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is a part of the JMNJR Radio Network, home to other productions such as the Bulldog Hour, Tangents with Friends, and Nat Chats with Dad. Until next time.